Today, on this episode of The Crossover, we will be discussing overcoming adversity, turning tragedy into opportunity, with Navy SEAL Mark Robbins. Find out how a member of the Special Forces dealt with catastrophic injury and rebounded stronger than ever. Much more on this episode of The Crossover. Good afternoon, everyone. Talking with another amazing Navy SEAL today, Mark Robbins. Dude's got a crazy story. Going to invite him on now. Thank you so much for joining us. And I know you're super busy, and I'm going to just do a brief introduction just while everyone's logging on. But again, thank you so much for joining us. We have the pleasure today of speaking with Mark Robbins, a true hero and role model for everyone. The more that I've learned about him, it's super inspirational about his story. So that's what we're here today to discuss. His story really defines sacrifice, perseverance, and resilience. Mark, as background, is a former Navy SEAL who did multiple combat deployments in Iraq. And on his last deployment, Mark sustained a gunshot wound to the head from a bullet that went over his rifle, through his right eye, and out the back of his head. Amazingly, Mark refused to be carried to the medivac helicopter. Instead, he got up and he walked himself through the hot zone to be transported to a medical facility. The injury left him blind in the right eye, but against all odds, Mark, as you'll hear, worked his way through critical injury and recovered. And upon recovery, he found himself a new career in law enforcement, and we'll go into that as well. He is now a detective in the Criminal Investigations Division at Lake County. He is assigned to the Sheriff's Office Tactical Response Team as an assistant team leader and is a member of the Community Safety Team. And his story, as you'll learn about, simply incredible. Can't wait to really delve into the details. Here today to discuss overcoming tragedy, turning adversity into opportunity. Mark, thanks so much for joining us.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, man. So let's just start from the beginning. I always find the Navy SEAL kind of mentality to be so amazing. What drove you to become a Navy SEAL? Was there one moment in your life, or was it a culmination of multiple things?
It's kind of funny because I think a lot of people have a perception that there has to be some big reason to go join the Navy SEALs or whatever it may be, any special forces type of unit. And really for me, during high school, it became pretty obvious that I was going to be going into the military and probably not off to college, just between personalities and overall what my interests were. It was going to be the military. So I started taking a look into it, and I think overall what the biggest deciding factor was I met a Navy SEAL. He actually had to be banged up. He told me a few stories, told me about their mission sets and what they were doing. And, it sounded exactly like what I wanted to do. And then talking to actually another high school buddy who also went and became a Navy SEAL. We went through an enlistment program and got the contract, and off we went. See, now the funny part of the story is, just like any corporation or institution, I signed up. I tried to get my SEAL Source rating contract, and what happened is they were trying to make me become a nuke. So they wanted me to do a different job in the Navy. They weren't quite giving me what I was looking at. So to be honest, I started looking at the Army Rangers. Started looking at that, started looking at different opportunities, but then I ended up getting my contract, so off I went.
Awesome story. I mean, tell me a little bit about what it means to you to be part of that Navy SEAL team, because that's really what it's about. It's about being part of that team, not just an individual. What does that mean to you?
So my perspective on it, there's really a few different parts to that, because when you're aspiring to be a part of this community, you look at these guys somewhat like they're gods. You emulate them. You want to do everything that they're doing. You want to be them. But you don't have a really good understanding of what it actually is. Foolishly, I guess you have these ideas of what they are and what they are not. And then once you get into the community, it's an absolute honor to be part of it. One thing is, it's not only that you're a part of a community of like-minded individuals that are serving together on the same sort of mission, but you're also doing it for the country. And it's such an honor to be able to do that mission, and have that responsibility. looking back and comparing it to other things that I've done in my life, I'll tell you, there has never been any sort of experience just or similar to it. It's very unique being part of that community.
I mean, I think everyone, when they think of Navy SEALs, everyone knows Hell Week, and they think about the physical fortitude that it takes to become a Navy SEAL. But, what I've learned over time, just in talking to multiple Navy SEALs, is the mental fortitude is actually way more important than the physical fortitude. You want to just talk a little bit about why the mentality and mental strength is so important when becoming a Navy SEAL?
No, absolutely. And I've looked at it from two different sides. I had a brief period where I was first phase buzz instructor, where I put a few classes through Hell Week, so I was able to see it from the side of going through it and then also hosting it a little bit. And I'll tell you, so many people have tried to answer the question of what type of mental fortitude or toughness it takes to become a SEAL. And I wish I could, because if I did, I'd be writing my own check right now. Because as it stands, the average attrition rate still stands somewhere between 70 and 85%. And ever since they started looking at those numbers, they've been trying to get those attrition rates a little bit better, of course. But so I can't really answer, because I'll tell you what, as a buzz instructor, I would look at a student and try to make a guess. Is this guy going to make it based on his performance, based on his attitude, things like that? And more often, there's no rhyme or reason why a guy would quit or not. So I wasn't able to really make a good guesstimate on that. But for me, where I think really comes into the mental side of things is, the ability to focus on a specific task and accomplish that task. Because let's talk about Hell Week, because Hell Week is sort of the evolution that everyone talks about. They think it's the big one that we have to get by, and for Hell Week, I mean, if you look at that whole week in a whole, 5 days straight of physical exercise, very minimal sleep, and then of course surf torture, which is that hypothermia aspect of the whole thing. It wouldn't be very easily attainable or be able to accomplish it, right? So what I found myself doing, and this isn't my own credit, what I found myself doing, I think it was a little bit on the structure side, pointing things out to us, is pick a task at hand, focus on that, complete that. I found myself over and over and over. If the evolution was, I don't know, running a few miles, I would concentrate on that, finish that, and move on. The thing about it is, especially during Hell Week, those guys are running somewhere around 200 miles. And if you were to focus in on what you have to do with the entire week, I don't think you're ever going to make it. Instead of just breaking it down and making one thing at a time.
That's such an interesting thing you say. So they haven't found a way to predict who's going to become a Navy SEAL or who's going to make it through Hell Week. But in your experience, it's the ability to focus on the present and not worry about the future, and just focus on the task at hand and not get caught up in, well, after this task, I got these other 12 tasks to go.
Exactly.
Wow. And what, as a Navy SEAL, what was and what still is your mindset when facing adversity or any challenge in life?
Any challenge in life, or any problem, really, life is really just about problem solving. And whatever the task at hand may be, I just try to focus in on what's important now, what has to happen now, and what can happen later. And if the problems or side problems don't affect the overall outcome, I try to push those to the side and just focus in on what has to happen to accomplish what I'm trying to do. And I think that's easily translated over to my recovery over this last 15 years, roughly.
Yeah. I mean, that's very well said. Life is about problem solving. I feel like that's particularly important for the young generation who seem to approach challenges differently. But I think what you said definitely carries a lot of weight. Life is about problem solving, and the people who are successful understand how to solve problems, not just complain. Let's get into your life-changing event, because that's really what it's all about. As I said earlier, you were in battle and you got shot in the face and the bullet came out the back of your head. What do you remember about the event? Was it all a blur? Kind of take us through what you remember of that event.
So yeah, it was roughly 15 years ago, and I did get shot in the head. So being able to remember too much, I have a lot of snapshots, or I have some snapshots, and then I also have things that people told me that I remember of what actually had happened. So over the years, put those things together, and I think I have a pretty good understanding. But for what I actually remember myself is on the morning of the mission. Um, I remember some people were some enemy fighters moving in on our position, and I remember thinking, I just got off a watch. I was going to stretch it out a little bit, take a break, and here we go again. So what I did is I remember going from the second floor to the third floor, or the roof, which sits about three floors high. Um, I remember getting up there, and from that point, everything's pretty much a blur. I think my very next first memory was being slunched over on my knees, and just kind of head hanging, and thinking not good. Just thinking not good to myself, because for whatever had happened, it knocked me out pretty good. And I remember reaching up and touching the side of my head, and just thinking not good. And I didn't quite understand what was going on at the time, but I remember thinking there's a lot of mush going on right there.
Wow, crazy. And what was your first thought? I need to get out of here. I need to get to shelter. I need to get my gun. Like, what was it? Just a blur? I mean, was there any first thought?
So at that time, it was a blur, and then I don't think it was so much on getting a gun or getting out of there. I think it was more on the lines of what happened, and then I noticed I was being moved. Second in charge, one of my bosses, he actually had just come up there right before come up to the rooftop, just before I got shot, and he had told me that as he came up to the rooftop, he was looking around, and I told him, and I'll watch my language here, but get the F down, because I guess I had realized that bullets were flying overhead, but he was too high for that. And then I guess I didn't listen to my own advice, because I then came up and then would have gotten shot. He actually he drugged me across the rooftop, and then lowered me down to actually Ben Milligan, the other Navy SEAL that you interviewed, a little bit back. And one of my memories that I do have on that is when they lowered me down. Now, mind you, I'm shot in the head. There's no real way to treat that on the battlefield right away. It's not, you can't put a tourniquet on. You don't do a pressure bandage. It's just kind of wrap it, maybe cover up the entrance wound, but there's not much you can do. And I remember that they were lowering me down. And what you need to understand is a lot of these houses, they have flat rooftops. So there's a lot, they go out there, they hang their laundry, maybe go hang out, get out of the heat of the house. And there's typically stairs between the two different levels, but these stairs happen to be rubbled. So there's no easy way up and down from the rooftop I was on to the lower rooftop. So what they had to do was the one guy had to lower me down to Ben, and as they were lowering me, and mind you, I'm my eyeballs hanging down to about here, and I have the hole at the back of my head about the size of a silver dollar.
And you're awake. You're awake and conscious.
Because I remember all the blood rushing to my head, and then mumbling to myself, "Why would you ever lower me down head first?" But that was the only way they could really get me down.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. No, but I mean, those guys, they put themselves out there for me, and got me down and got me started the medical treatment that they needed to save my life.
So I guess that's just simply amazing. I guess now take us through the first couple of weeks after the injury, medical treatment. You started to realize exactly what happened. How close were you to death also?
So the first the first part of treatment actually started with the helicopter ride. I made I made my way to the helicopter, and they originally started treating me on the helicopter, did what they needed to do, and they got me to the field hospital. Um, from there, I don't know why, but again, I didn't want to walk. I didn't want to be carried. I felt like I was going to walk off the helicopter, so I walked off the helicopter into the field hospital, and I made it. I made it to that hospital bed, and then from there, it was lights out. I was like, made it in my mind. I made it home. I made it to where I needed to go. I was done. Just passed out.
But okay, so let me ask you, because that's very important to me, at least. That desire to walk on your own power as opposed to being carried, which is what most people would do. Why? I think it's amazing.
So it wasn't so there was a lot going on that day. And, from the onset of me getting shot, the firefight continued, and it actually lasted for several hours after I was evacuated out of there. But as we were getting engaged by the enemy forces, we we called in a quick reaction force, which were Marines on Humvees, and they helped surround the area and help calm the day down. But we realized very quickly that wasn't going to be good enough to get me out of there, or they realized that it wasn't going to be good enough. So they called in actually Chinook, CH-47, and so the whole day it really wasn't about me. And those guys all put themselves out there to to save my life. And throughout training, one thing that was definitely ingrained was, if you get injured, you do your best to take care of yourself. If you can treat yourself, treat yourself. If you can move yourself, move yourself. Because what happens when you get injured? Well, you not only took yourself, if you can't treat yourself, if you're not only taking yourself out of the fight, you're also taking maybe one or maybe even two other teammates out of the fight who should be actually engaged in the enemy. So I think maybe it was just that sort of mentality ingrained that made me go, you know what? If I can walk, I'm going to walk.
Yeah. It sounds like even when facing death, you're still thinking about the team first. And I just want to emphasize that for everyone listening. Like, even when you're shot in the face, I think 99% of society would think to themselves, oh my God, help me. Your mentality was, I'm going to help myself because the team comes first. So I just, again, much respect. Once they treated you, what were your deficits? What were you left with after they treated you and you were stable?
So, the most obvious one was obviously the loss of the right eye. One of my first memories at the hospital was actually waking up out of a surgery and letting me know that we enucleated your right eye. I'm thinking, well, what is that? I asked, well, what is that? But yeah, but for a lot of time and for a long time, actually, one of my biggest fears was not fully recovering. And my fear was, and a lot of it was, I had a lot of confusion for quite a bit of time, you know, and through speech therapy and through other therapies, that all came back. But for almost a year, there was my biggest worry was not getting my mind back, because for a long time the way I operated was, if I left the house, I wrote stuff down. If I had tasks to do, I wrote down the important parts of the tasks down, and I would try to get those done. And I went out a checklist, and thankfully, through all the medical help and all the surgeries and everything that they did for me, I pretty much cut everything back, which was pretty amazing.
Yeah. And take us through that road to recovery. How many years did it take? How many hours per day of therapy? Just give us a kind of snippet of what it looked like.
Yeah. So for the first 6 months, I was at the hospital 8 hours a day. 8 hours a day doing physical therapy along with speech therapy, and then of course other follow-up appointments, because turns out not just the head injury actually affected the rest of the body, parts of the body also that needed to be rehabbed. And then slowly that stuff started to drop off. Slowly, the appointments went from 6 a day down to cut that in half, and then keep on cutting that in half. And what I really noticed is improvements by holidays. And what I mean by that is, Christmas will come around, and I would think to myself, man, last Christmas I was really messed up. I didn't realize how messed up I was. This Christmas I'm feeling better. And then, the 4th of July would come around, and I would do the same thing. And I think that went on for about 2.5 years, to where I was seeing improvements over those landmark dates. So it took a while.
Yeah. Again, take us through your mindset, because I really want to focus on mental fortitude here, which I think comes from your background, of course, being a Navy SEAL. I think 99% of society, catastrophic injury, shot in the face, nearly dead, would basically just, throw in the towel. How did you not let this beat you? What was your daily, weekly, monthly mindset going into this recovery?
So from from day one, from day one to where I was actually awake for most of the days, I wanted out of the bed and I wanted to get back to work. I had no interest of being held up in the hospital. I had no interest of this thing slowing me down in my mind. All it was a loss of an eye. I can continue on, no big deal. Two eyes has 190 degrees of peripheral vision. Um, one eye says 150, so I'm really only down like 40 degrees. So I was like, okay, I can work through that. And then the rest of the stuff is, so the biggest problem I had was I wasn't realistically going to continue doing my job as in the teams. That became apparent to me that wasn't going to happen. So how I chose to move forward is I found a new goal. My new goal was to move on, and ultimately decided law enforcement was another way to do that. There were a lot of obstacles, though. When you look at the law enforcement criteria or requirements for when you're going to apply for this job, most of the time it lists you need two eyes. So that was a big challenge I had to overcome, and I was able to find. I just kept on applying, kept on working towards it, kept on making sure that there were no excuses to why I couldn't do the job, and luckily enough, I got hired on.
How did you pick that job in particular?
So I was really bent out of shape about. I didn't necessarily had planned on leaving the teams in the manner that I did. I felt like it was an early departure, and I still felt like that I wanted to still serve in some way. And I'm sitting there laying, and actually I remember laying in the hospital bed thinking, what am I going to do? If I can't do this job, what am I going to do? And so I figured, law enforcement, I did still think, well, maybe there's going to be some camaraderie there. Maybe there'll still be, there's still a mission set there, obvious mission set in law enforcement. And, I was like, this will be the best transition for me that I can do.
Now, did you have any major setbacks or obstacles during your recovery? During that several month, several year recovery, were there any notable setbacks that you had?
The biggest thing, and this goes on to just overall mindset on the recovery or something like this, is the overall setbacks wasn't anything major. It wasn't anything one big thing. It was waking up every day, understanding that I'm going to have a headache. I'm going to have some residual pain. I'm going to have some of this stuff going on, and I'm just going to have to push past it, have to ignore it, and concentrate on the important stuff and keep on going. And that lasting for about 1.5 years, that was the hardest part of the recovery, is the day in, day out, dealing with those sort of obstacles.
Would you say that you are better and stronger after this injury than you were before?
I would say I learned from it. And I learned that, especially, when this happened, I was 25. Since then, I've learned that, worry about the important stuff. If it doesn't affect the now, don't worry about it. I think that, yeah, I think that overall, mentally, I look at things and I think, yeah, no problem. All I have to do is put my chin down and keep on going. That's all I gotta do. No problem. Before I may have questioned myself. Now I know that I have that covered.
God, it's so amazing to hear. You know, wrapping it up, because I know you had a long day. You told me you were working all day, and I'm sure you're tired. You know, what is your take-home message for anyone listening who may be facing adversity and challenges in life? Like you said, life is all about problem solving, and everyone has challenges in life. So, what do you say to people who may feel like, ah, this is too much. I've had too much, you know, too many challenges, too many obstacles, can't do it. What do you say to those people?
So I say, instead of making reasons why you can't do something, find reasons why you can. And what I mean by that is, when I was starting to look at law enforcement, I said, well, everyone requires two eyes. It's clear. It's black and white on the application. It needs two eyes. So I was starting to make excuses for myself why I can't do this. And actually, what I found out is that, Medal of Honor recipient, actually another Navy SEAL, Tommy Norris, he lost his eye in combat. In fact, his right eye in combat. And he went on to be a special agent for the FBI and actually founding member of their hostage rescue team. So I was lucky enough. I gave him a call. He gave me some advice. I followed his advice and I followed through. So if you have some sort of injury or some sort of illness that you're dealing with, someone has been there and done it before you. And if you can learn from them and take a little bit of advice from them, absolutely, please do that. Because that not only gave me a little bit of knowledge of what I needed to do, it gave me the confidence that someone's done it, therefore I can. And then not only that is, you know, for all, for me, a lot of it was physical pain. It eventually goes away. Just have to keep on going, and it eventually goes away. Yeah, that's I don't have much else to say about that.
Yeah, it's such an amazing story, man. I can just tell you what a pleasure it has been to talk to you. You really are an inspiration and a role model for so many people. It really shows the power of mindset and how everyone focuses on the physical, but if you don't get your mindset straight, everything else is not going to fall into place. And the fact that setbacks and challenges are actually opportunities for growth, like you said. So your story's amazing. What you've accomplished is amazing. And again, thanks for being such a role model to everyone, man. Hope you have a wonderful weekend.
All right, thank you, you too.